Today I will tell you another great love story that happened in Tirana, Albania in the history. In the late 1950s, young Alira lived in a quiet Tirana neighborhood, surrounded by the high walls of her family's home. She often felt as confined as her country, which was largely isolated from the rest of the world. Her parents were respected and deeply traditional, carrying high hopes that Alira would follow the expected path, marry a suitable Albanian man, settle down, and uphold the family's honor. In a time when the government watched over its citizens' every move, including relationships, the prospect of freedom felt distant. Yet, a quiet yearning for something different lay within her. One spring day, a small group of Italians arrived in Tirana for a cultural exchange, tasked with restoring parts of Albania's architectural heritage. It was an extraordinary event, as foreign visitors were rare. Among them was Alessandro, a young artist with a thoughtful gaze and a gentle smile. Assigned to work on the National Theater, he'd been chosen for his careful manner, someone who wouldn't attract much attention. But despite this, Alessandro was captivated by the city's unique beauty and its quiet, ancient charm. Alira's daily walks led her past the National Theater, where she began noticing Alessandro's quiet focus as he sketched the building's intricate details. She found herself drawn to his intensity and his almost reverent attention to each line and shadow. From a distance, she would watch him, captivated by his world, a world where things were created, not just controlled. Alessandro soon noticed her too, the young woman who lingered on the edges of his vision, observing quietly. Her presence became a comfort to him in a foreign land, where he was careful to remain unnoticed. One day, as Alira was watching Alessandro work, a sudden rainstorm swept over the city. She was unprepared, caught in the open without cover. Alessandro looked up from his sketching, smiled gently, and gestured for her to join him under the awning. Though hesitant, Alira accepted. They exchanged shy smiles as they watched the rain fall, sharing a brief, wordless moment that neither would forget. It was Alessandro who broke the silence, speaking in his halting Albanian to introduce himself. Alira, surprised, offered to correct his pronunciation, and they both laughed. In the days that followed, they began to, accidentally, meet more often, seeking each other out in quiet corners, unnoticed by the prying eyes around them. Tirana, with its narrow streets and starlit nights, became their sanctuary. They shared fragments of their lives, dreams, and the frustrations of living in a world defined by boundaries they wished they could ignore. They laughed over his mistakes in Albanian and her struggle to learn Italian words from him, each mispronunciation creating shared memories. They both understood the risks of their encounters, yet the danger only added to the depth of their connection. As their friendship blossomed into love, Alira's family began to notice her absences. Rumors about the Italian artist and the young Albanian woman reached her parents, who were alarmed. To them, Alessandro represented a disruption, a rebellion against the life they'd envisioned for their daughter. They confronted Alira, insisting that she end all contact with him, warning her of the consequences. Her heart broke at the thought, but she knew the risks, not just for herself, but for Alessandro. Tearfully, she agreed to her parents' demands. When Alira told Alessandro of her decision, he held her close, understanding her pain as deeply as his own. He pressed a small sketch of her hand into hers, his final gift, a keepsake of their stolen days together. It was a simple drawing, yet to Alira, it held her dreams, her hopes, and everything she would have to leave behind. Alessandro returned to Italy, carrying with him memories of Tirana and the face of the woman who had become his muse, each detail of her expression etched in his mind. Years passed and life moved forward. Alira married a local businessman approved by her family. She poured herself into the roles of wife and mother, finding joy in her children and duty in her marriage. Yet, on quiet nights, she would retrieve Alessandro's sketch, now faded but carefully preserved, and allow herself to remember those fleeting moments of freedom and love. In Italy, Alessandro dedicated himself to his art, pouring his emotions and memories into his work. He painted scenes inspired by Tirana, imbuing each with colors and details that captured his lost love. His work gained quiet acclaim, with many pieces depicting a young woman, her face shaped by shadows and light, a tribute to the Muse he could never forget. Galleries displayed his paintings with titles that hinted at his memories, Silhouettes at Dusk, Whispers of Tirana, and others that spoke of distant places and hidden feelings. Then, in the early 1990s, Albania began to open its doors to the world, its isolation finally lifting. Alira, now in her 60s with grown children, found herself thinking of Alessandro again. The possibility of travel, once unimaginable, was now within reach. On a rare impulse, she arranged a trip to Italy. She hadn't dared to hope she might see him, but something in her heart urged her to visit the place he called home. In Rome, she wandered the streets, marveling at the city's vibrancy. While exploring a local gallery, she stopped, breathless, before a painting that felt achingly familiar. It was the National Theatre of Tirana, depicted in somber hues, with two figures silhouetted against the backdrop. She read the plaque beside it, "To my lost muse from Tirana." Alira felt her heart race as she realized the artist could only be Alessandro. As she stood, transfixed, someone approached her from behind. She turned and found herself face to face with Alessandro. Though older, his eyes held the same gentle expression she remembered. They stood in silence for a moment, stunned, before Alessandro spoke her name softly. She nodded, tears welling up, feeling the weight of years and memories in that single word. They spent the hours that followed talking, sharing stories of the years lost and the lives they had led. Alessandro confessed that he'd never forgotten her, that she had been his muse for decades, woven into countless pieces of his work. Each painting had been a tribute to the love they'd once shared, a way of keeping her close despite the distance. Alira, too, shared how her memories of him had never faded, how she'd kept his sketch as a symbol of the life she'd once dreamed of. Now, with no restrictions or family expectations, they decided to embrace this second chance. Alira extended her trip, and together, they explored Italy, visiting places Alessandro had painted and creating new memories. They wandered through markets, sat by the sea, and filled the days with laughter, conversation, and silent moments that spoke of the years they had missed. Eventually, Alira returned to Tirana, but not alone. Alessandro joined her, and they spent their later years between Italy and Albania, living the life they had once imagined. In Tirana, they would stroll hand in hand, revisiting the places where their story began. At the National Theatre, they would pause, exchanging a smile as they remembered the spring days that had shaped their lives. Their love became a quiet legend among friends and family, a story of a bond that had endured against all odds. Alira and Alessandro's story proved that some loves, no matter how distant, are timeless, transcending barriers and blossoming again as if no time had passed at all.